Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. Bolt Action 3rd edition Armies of the United States is very nearly with us. Osprey Games have very kindly sent me a copy along to have a little look at and share my thoughts with you.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems and offer custom items to suit your club or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
So we've kind of known the release order and the timings or rough timings of the releases of these army books for a while now. I covered in a very similar video to this the Armies of Germany book a little while ago. I'll try and remember to put a link in. And then more recently I was lucky enough to get early access to some of the new plastic US Airborne, which are wonderful, and I did a painting tutorial, and again I'll pop a little link in now for that as well. But what we've got here is the Armies of United States for 3rd edition in the new style books, all updated for the new version of the game. I was definitely excited for this one. I have some plans to build some US forces. In fact, I've already started some. And my son has recently acquired some miniatures, thank you Alan, and he will be starting a very small force of his own. Now my intention is very much to make this an overview flick through kind of review of the game, no more than sort of 10-15 minutes. I'm not going to do a really detailed rundown of all of the rules changes and what changes that might have on the meta. I do not play this game competitively in any way whatsoever. It's very much a beer and pretzels game at home most of the time. I know people will play it that way. I totally get it. I understand it from the other games I play, which I am a bit more interested in that side of the community. I've just no engagement with it as yet, so I'm not even going to pretend to do that. Go and watch one of those long reviews if you want something really crunchy, but I'm going to review it from a sort of a wargamer's perspective and people interested in a light form of wargaming for World War II. And that seems to be the case with this new edition. We have a beautiful, very shiny, full colour book that's beautifully presented in my opinion. Around 110 pages, which is slightly smaller than the Armies of Germany, but bigger than the previous edition's Armies of the United States. And as you can see, it's very nice. Lots and lots of colour, loads of artwork, loads of pictures. And while there's no index at the back, there's a very detailed contents that you can use very much in that kind of way. You follow the headings obviously, but you can find most of the things that are in the books. It's very detailed, and I found it useful while flicking through and looking up certain items. And then you get into the introduction, you've got a little bit about Bolt Action, and then you move into the kind of setting the scene, I would call it, campaign stuff around World War II and around the US Army's involvement, and it's very nicely presented, very light, very much like an Osprey book, funnily enough, and they are the publishers, and I think it's really good, especially if you are new to the period. And there will be younger people all the time picking up these games which haven't grown up with it on their TV screens quite the way such older people like me have. And there's something else I'm really impressed with, is the addition of some of these colour plates that you find in those Osprey campaign books and army books and things, and it's a really nice touch if you're looking for ideas for paint schemes, colour schemes for your armies. You actually got these within the rule books now, and I just think all the extra colour plates that have been added to the overall aesthetics of these books just really move them up a level. They are lovely things. Then we're on to the main bulk of the book, the army list, and then all the profiles that go with that. And this is the most interesting part for most of the existing players of Bolt Action, to find out how their armies changed. And I know that excitement through years of playing Warhammer and picking up codexes and army books and all those things. It's very nicely presented and very well laid out. Right up front, we have the special army rules, which give flavour to each of the armies in Bolt Action. Fire and Manoeuvre is a familiar rule, I believe, from previous editions, which basically means that for every 3 men within a squad carrying a rifle, carbine may add an additional dice to the bag when the unit shoots. And then you've got air superiority as well, which means your forward air observer unit can call an airstrike twice instead of once per game. Next up, we have modern communications, where units can take an order test to move from the reserve onto the table and not apply the usual -1 penalty. And then there's by air, land and sea, which from my point of view looks like a nice way of adding some extra flavour to your overall army. Obviously, if you're selecting an airborne force and you're selecting airborne units, they will be airborne, but as you expand that force out and take different supporting units, they may be from the regular list, so you're able to assign them as airborne, marines, rangers and so on, and then they have these extra rules that give them a little bit more flavour. That's the way I've interpreted it anyway. I'm sure in the comments below someone will tell me that I'm wrong for that, but I quite like that. I like the overall idea of flavour. That came up with the German book, and we'll see that later with this, with the restrictions on different periods of army lists as well. We then have quartermaster stores, which is just a few extra rules, equipment, ideas that you can take on your units that make them more flavourful and American. So if you've got a standardised profile that's across different army books, I assume that this will allow those units who are able to take these fit in with the theme of the US Army a little bit more. And then we kind of move into the core of the book, which is all of those profiles, those units, those entries. They're very clearly laid out. You've got a little bit of blurb and history around them. You've got their stats laid out, their options, as you'd expect for any war game when you have an army list. And they're nicely spaced out with pictures of the miniatures sometimes, other times dioramas and things like that. Sometimes double page spreads of artwork just to break it up. So it's very, very well laid out, much better than the previous edition books. I think it's much easier on the eye, looks much more professional, and that's one of the things that's really sort of shining through with this. It's just become a little bit more modern. And then if you come from outside of World War II or even historical wargaming, you're used to productions from Games Workshop and some of the other fantasy and sci-fi companies, I think you'd pick this up and you're not feeling like you're stepping back in time in quite the same way, that you don't feel like you've got a home-made product or a very small company made products. That's not knocking any of those companies that make publications. Everyone's catching up at the moment, but there was definitely a step change and feel, in my opinion, with some of those other productions, and this doesn't feel like that now. This feels like a really nice, glossy, shiny presentation of rules, and some people won't care about that, I know, but for me it's a really nice thing to have and just to flick through, whereas sometimes some rule sets out there just don't feel like that. They don't feel like it's a nice thing to have on your coffee book as well, whereas regardless if you like the game or not, a big thick Warhammer rulebook or codex or army book is quite often nice just to pick up and flick through when you're having a cup of tea or something, and these are starting to feel like that for me. The next section is sample armies, which I quite enjoyed in the Germany book, and it just gives you some ideas, especially if you're new to the game, of what an army might look like. There's pictures of them as well as the full army list there, and they give different points values as well, so it's not just one standard. We've got a real nice mix here, ranging from 750 all the way up to 1250, letting you know that it's okay to go and play different size games. And of course, wargamers, we know we can play lots of different size games, but people are used to being led by the hand, especially if they play Games Workshop games, and think of restrictions. And it's quite nice to be able to say, look, this is the kind of army list you can play. These are the kind of things you'd have in them. It just gives you a guide, because when you first look at this, especially if you're new to a period, you may just not have an idea about what to build. You go pure historical, what works within the game, and I think these are really nice, and it just shows that you maybe get the new starter set with your airborne, and this little 750 point airborne army list there is something to aim for, and I think that's a really nice thing. And then we move on to the final section of the book, and this is the force selection guide, something I loved from the previous book, the Germany book, and it just breaks the force selection down into early war, mid-war and late war, and it's such a simple thing in my mind, but it means you can make a game that's often played in a kind of points matched way for people who want to have a relatively competitive or balanced style game. Even if it's light competitive, they want to be able to have a fair balance between who wins and those people who want to play historically, and that's just a really nice way of meeting in the middle a little bit. And I think it does that nicely, so you can select things purely from those perspectives. So we're going to play early war, we're going to play mid-war, we're going to play late war, which I really like. But essentially, that's it. That's your book. We get to the credits at the end, and we're done. And again, as a casual player of Bolt Action, I really like it. I think it's really, really nicely presented, and I think that's the standout thing for me. I think it's better than the previous edition in that sense. It looks so much nicer inside. It's a bigger book, and I just think it's grown up a little bit and fits in with the modern world. And the game's been around for a while now, so it's no surprising that it's sort of turned into that a better, higher, glossier, more professional production. But I think it should be applauded and appreciated. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that, found that useful. It's very much a quick flick through and an overview of what to expect to find in the book, not a view on it from a sort of tournament competitive point of view. And I know that Bolt Action has its completely historical players somewhere in the middle and people that go to events and things like that. I don't play in that kind of way, so I'm not going to give you any detailed rundown on changes to units and what's in better and what's not better anymore. That's not really the way my mind works, especially with historical gaming. I very much play it for fun, hence the kind of overview and the flick through without much comment on the rules themselves. And that's why this video is shorter than maybe some of the more detailed reviews that will be out there. So hopefully that suits you as well. And didn't mind that in the video. My apologies if you're looking for something a little bit more crunchy in that regard, but I'm sure there are other videos out there which do that very well. If you have enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, drop a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. There's plenty of other Bolt Action content on the channel, loads of other historical as well, and loads of non-historical stuff, be that Warhammer the Old World or a multitude of other things. So do have a little snoop around the channel. If you're new to this and you haven't found the channel before, you may well find lots more things to your liking. If you're a more regular reviewer and you'd like to support the channel, there are loads of links in the video description below that help. The main one being my Patreon, which really is the best way you can support me and support the channel, so I can have the time to be able to make videos like this and my longer videos, my painting tutorials and all the hobby videos and things that go with that. But there are other things as well. You can purchase dice at the moment. You just have to send me an email that's in the video description and I will send you the order form to do that. You can also choose to shop at the affiliate links I've got below, including ordering stuff directly from Warlord Games and also ordering from the channel sponsor Counterattack Bases. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.